Hello and welcome to the EIC Clearly podcast. EIC Clearly? See what I did there? This is the podcast that brings you in-depth discussions with energy, policy and thought leaders on the most critical issues, trends and innovations shaping the global energy supply chain. Hi everybody, it's Stuart Broadley here from the EIC and welcome to another EIC Clearly podcast. Today I'm with Aidan Clegg, who is Chief Executive Officer of the West Somerset Lagoon business and critical new project for renewable power in the UK. So if you've not heard of the West Somerset Tidal Lagoon, my job today is to really make sure that you understand how critical this project could be for the UK and its net zero journey in this vision of capturing the UK's untapped natural energy. So, a bit about this project. The West Somerset Tidal Lagoon is a proposed tidal range power scheme that aims to harness the energy of the tides to provide zero carbon renewable energy. It is strategically located on the southern coast of the Bristol Channel basin between Minehead and Watchet, the world's second highest tidal range. And if this project goes ahead, because of this unique tidal property, it will become the UK's largest sustainable energy project. So this is a really exciting chance to get to know Aidan, who's the architect of this project. It is not yet at FID, and absolutely you can imagine he's now working with policymakers to get this incorporated into the UK's clean growth plan. So Aidan, welcome to the EIC office here in London. It's lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
Where is home for you? Is it, I assume, on the coastline of Somerset?
No, sadly not. I'm based in Surrey, but my mother does live on the coastline of Somerset, which is partially the reason I got involved in this.
I mean, if this project goes ahead, are you going to relocate?
Well, that's a big question.
With a simple answer?
Quite possibly we will have to do that, yes.
And maybe we will all relocate, because when you look at the dynamics of this project, it's quite incredible. We'll come on to the scale of it and just the ambition of it. And I think many people, they may not have even heard of this project. And I think that's one of the things we find as EIC is how there are so many amazing technologies and ideas out there to achieve net zero. But how do you get them to the point where it's the one that the media and the policymakers are focusing on? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Aidan, before we get into explaining the project a bit more, let's get to know you a bit better. And I want to know at the end of this sort of first part of our discussion today, why you've ended up putting all of your time into this project when you've had such an illustrious career to get here today. So take us through, where did it all start for you?
Well, it started, funnily enough, at my mother's house, because her neighbour is Chris Binney, who's our chairman, who has been working on this project for 8 years. I've been talking to him about tidal energy for probably about 15 years. He started off looking at the Severn Barrage, which I'm sure we'll come back to talk about in a minute. So I've always been fascinated by the tidal range in the Bristol Channel, and he is basically the same age as my father. So I was talking to him and said, basically, Chris, this is not going to get off the ground unless you get a younger person on board. Although I've had a long career, I'm still younger than most of my board members, all of which have many, many years of experience in tidal range power. So I took on the job basically with my background in the city, which is therefore gives me a good background in raising money, which inevitably is the biggest challenge for a project like this.
And talk about that, you've actually had really quite a background in the investment community, haven't you? Including Managing Director of UBS Investment Bank, 1993 to 2007, Managing Director, Nomura International, 2007 to 2011, Global Head of General Industrials at BNP Paribas, 2011-2015, Director Strategy Corporate Development, RBS, 2015-2018, and so the list goes on. So you must have learnt a lot about the keys to bankability of projects like this.
Yes, no, absolutely. I've financed or helped finance many projects over the years. I've raised money for my own private equity business, so hopefully I understand what it takes to put a good investment case together, and I think we have a good investment case here, both for the country but also for the people who eventually put up the money. Okay,
so I have to ask now then, before we get to this project, generally, what is the key to bankability? When you're looking, let's now put on your old investment hat before we get into this new CEO role you've got. When you were looking at projects, some, I assume, relatively quickly became, in your eyes, investable, and others were much more challenging. When you look back, what was that sort of magic key that you were looking for of, oh, that's a golden project that we're all going to get excited by? And counter to that, what were those projects that you saw almost straight away and thought, there's no chance?
Well, I think at the end of the day, what you're looking at is a reliable return profile that's going to be attractive to investors. And a reliable return profile means both cash returns, but but also the risk that you're taking around it. So what we're looking at here is using the regulatory asset-based pricing model, which has been used for Sizewell C, for the Thames Tideway Tunnel, which both gives investors a guaranteed return, but also because of the nature of it, it's a much lower return profile because of the risk is much lower. That's shared with the bill payers. And I think if we can get that treatment, then we will be able to find a lot of money because pension funds, etc., are crying out for reliable index-linked returns, which is what this would provide.
So before we get into this project, I'm just interested in this idea still, though, of I totally understand that you're looking for good cash generation, reliable returns and low risk. Can you give an example of a project that you've looked at in the past where it was just a brilliant example of meeting those criteria, and another example of a project where it just clearly didn't? And what's going on that some projects can be so wildly off and yet still people believe in them?
Well, a good example of a project that didn't work was the Swansea Bay Lagoon, which is a small tidal lagoon in Swansea, which did get a development consent order, but at the end of the day was turned down by the government because it was basically the power was going to be far too expensive. And I think that got a lot of political momentum behind it because people love tidal power. Swansea is also in Bristol Channel, obviously, but no, they hadn't thought through the implications of the cost and made sure that the Department for Energy were on side with that. So they spent a lot of money developing it without the necessary top-level approval, and therefore it failed, which is one of the reasons why tidal power has been a challenge in the UK. Now, obviously, the converse to that would be Sizewell C, and we can argue whether the price is worth paying, but we need reliable baseload power, and nuclear power is required. So the regulatory asset-based model has been applied to that to make sure that it gets built, which is obviously with Hinkley Point, we've seen that's been much delayed and many cost overruns, which means to attract investment into the sector, you need to provide proper returns for the investors.
Yeah, and I think these sort of lessons that you've learned, I'm sure, will play now on your mind as you look at this project now and how to get it to FID.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the advantage of this project is we're using tried and tested technology. I mean, nobody's done anything at this scale. There have been various fairly large projects that have been done over the years, but nothing as large as this. So what we're doing is something with tried and tested technology, but just at a bigger scale than has been done before.
Okay, so let's do some stats. If you could take me through, what is this scale? How do you define this project? Because it's huge, right? I mean, it's huge in ambition, but it's actually huge in dimensions.
No, absolutely. So if you think about a tidal lagoon, so you're basically building a dam in the Severn, or we're proposing to build a dam in the Severn Estuary. So the wall length is a pi r function, and the area of water enclosed is r squared. So we're looking to build a 7-kilometre radius lagoon, which means we'll have a 22-kilometre barrage, semicircular, to maximise the impounded area, and that will impound 80 square kilometres of sea. So pretty large scale. And the reason that tidal hasn't really taken off is because to date, projects have either been too small, like the Swansea Bay Lagoon I just referred to, or too large, like the Severn barrage, which would have put a barrage between Wales and Somerset, which is terrific for generating tidal energy, would have generated perhaps 12% of the UK's total needs, but would have required you to close Bristol, Avonmouth and Cardiff ports, which obviously wasn't too popular with the operators there, and also had a big impact on the ecology of the Severn Estuary, which is, as soon as you get much further up the estuary from Watchet, it becomes full of SSSIs and special protection areas, etc. So what we think we've got here is a sort of Goldilocks project, which is neither too big nor too small. So the project will cost about £11.2 billion and will generate 6.5 terawatts of electricity a year, which is enough to power about 2 million homes, and obviously will last, we think, we put a design life on it for 120 years, which is obviously twice as long as a nuclear power station and 4 times as long as a wind farm, so it has a good long-term view. And is also producing reliable energy because the tide comes in and out twice a day, every day. So we don't need any fuel and we don't have any waste out of the project either.
So I'm really interested in this idea that somehow the UK has this second biggest tidal range, and in Somerset, north coast of Somerset. Can you explain to me a bit about what that is, what that means, having this huge tidal range, and why it's so important for this project?
I mean, the UK has about half of the Europe's tidal range potential just because of our geography being on the northwest, if you like, northwest coast of Europe. The Severn obviously is a very large estuary, which gives you a large tidal range. Because the generation depends on the difference between the water levels inside and outside the lagoon, the bigger the tidal range, the more power that we can generate, because obviously we have about 10 metre tidal range where our scheme is located. So we're getting a lot of head pressure to enable us to generate a lot of electricity. The reason why we've located it in between Minehead and Watchet is it's outside all of the special areas of sites of special scientific interest, etc. If you moved further up the channel, you would have a greater tidal range. It's about 12 metres at Bristol, but the problem is you're right in the middle at that stage of all of the sites of special scientific interest. Plus, obviously, the channel gets narrower the further up you move. So putting a 7-kilometre radius project further up the channel is going to have a significantly bigger impact on the tidal ranges upstream.
But it would also have a negative impact on shipping and general access.
Yes, exactly. So we're outside all the shipping lanes to enable that, and we think all of the main fish migratory paths as well, where we are on the south coast.
So this SSI, this zones of special interest, this is an ecology wildlife issue.
Exactly.
I guess this is the number one issue for you to work your way through first then. Where are you in understanding the risks to wildlife and why this project negates those risks?
First of all, where we're located, we're outside all the sites of special scientific interest. We also don't have any major rivers flowing into our lagoon, and obviously rivers are where fish like to move to spawn, so that's a big advantage. Obviously, putting projects of this size into the channel will affect the tidal flows upstream, but we think we've done quite a lot of hydro-environmental modelling already. Professor Roger Faulkner's on our board and is a professor of hydro-environmental modelling at Cardiff University and sort of the world expert in this area. So we've done quite a lot of modelling already. We think that the impact of the lagoon will be to reduce the tidal range slightly upstream, but not by a material amount. We're talking about tens of centimetres when you've got a 12-metre tidal range. So it's not going to be, so we think it's manageable from that perspective. Obviously, we also have to worry about birds. We think the birds are going to be fine because at the moment, any birds that nest on the coast inside the lagoon experience large quantities of dog walkers because it's on the southwest coast path, and we're planning to put some bird islands into the lagoon to produce a safer place for them to roost. The other issue is eels. If we're going on to all our eels and shad, but we have looked at those, and again, we don't think there's going to be a massive impact. And the reason for that is we're proposing to use triple regulated bulb turbines for the project, which actually turn quite slowly, so fish can pass through them without damaging themselves.
So let's get into the technology, because I think that was always going to be a critical decision for you. Yeah. So this is effectively a closed lagoon.
Yes.
In a semicircular shape with a radius of 7 kilometres. It's a big construction project.
Yes.
And then the power generation happens through these turbines you talk about. So can you explain the technology and a little bit about, is that established technology? Where is it being used elsewhere today? Is it a British company that's going to make it or could make it? And yeah, just how does it work?
So the technology is established. It is in use at the moment. There are 2 tidal range schemes in the world, which is not a lot, I concede. One in La Rance in Brittany in France and one in Siwa Lake in South Korea, both of which have been running for quite some time. We are proposing at this stage to use similar technology to they're using. So bulb turbines are used in every hydroelectric scheme. These are going to be a bit bigger than the ones used, but it's established technology. The La Rance project, for example, has been running for over 60 years using this technology. And then the barrage itself will be constructed from concrete caissons, which are basically similar technology that we used for the Normandy landings, basically. So again, tried and tested technology. And we deliberately wanted to use tried and tested technology so that we weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, as we know, a lot of renewable technologies require a lot of technical development to get to fruition. We're deliberately avoiding that issue. So if I wanted to build it, if I had planning permission and government support, I could place the orders today and firms would step forward to put it in place.
If you're enjoying this podcast and think you have an inspiring story to tell, contact me, Stuart Broadley, directly, as I would love to do a sea level podcast with you too. EIC is proud to be the UK's largest membership energy trade association and the 5th largest in the world. We are unique around the world for 3 reasons. We are truly energy agnostic, believing all energy technologies are vital to delivering energy security, affordability and a just transition. We are the only energy trade association anywhere in the world that offers a truly in-house one-stop shop for market intelligence, networks and events to help our members export, diversify and grow. And we are proud to be the voice of the energy supply chain, advocating for the 5 golden rules of a healthy energy supply chain. More details on EIC membership, the 5 golden rules, details about doing a future podcast with me, and how to contact us about anything else are in the description for this podcast. Where are these companies based that make these bulb turbines?
The big turbine manufacturers are basically GE in the States and then Voith and Siemens in Europe, so it'll be some combination of them who would look to do this. There is also a new technology which is quite exciting, which is an ultra-low head turbine, which is being developed by Jacobs in Warrington in Cheshire, which is currently in the lab, but is going to be tested, we hope, soon in Barry Docks in South Wales, and that could well be a candidate for this, which would then be British. So we'll obviously be keen to use British if we can. And one of the benefits of our scheme is because we are doing this and we're building 125 turbines, we hope that we will be able to encourage whoever's making the turbines to set up a factory in Britain to manufacture those turbines. As regards the concrete caissons, that's established technology, so any one of our main contractors can do it. For example, Kier is currently constructing a big series of caissons to protect Devonport docks down in Plymouth. There have been other projects globally that have done this, but basically the concrete caissons are, you build them on a dock, then you put them onto a barge and float them out to site and then sink them on site. So by definition, they're very large bits of concrete, so they will be made in ports in South Wales and in Bristol, basically.
Do you have a port identified for that yet?
We don't yet. We've had discussions with all the ports. They're all obviously happy to chat, but they were kind of waiting for us to get this a bit further forward.
I'm assuming bulb turbine technology is pretty low maintenance. I mean, for those of you that don't know much about bulb turbines, it's a type of reaction turbine, essentially a horizontal axis Kaplan turbine, used for low head, which I guess you could say 20 to 30 metre head, and high flow hydropower projects. As you say, the whole generator's housed inside a watertight bulb-shaped casing placed directly in the water stream. So the nature of this technology, and we know this also from hydropower, is very low maintenance. Is that right? Because that must be one of the critical factors for a project which has 120-year life.
Yes, I mean, it should be low maintenance. Obviously, it'll need maintaining because everything needs maintaining, but it should be low maintenance. I think the Laurence turbines have been operating for 60 years and have not been replaced. In our thoughts, we're thinking probably replace the turbines after 60 years, but they haven't had to do that in Brittany as yet, so they have got proven long life.
So, okay, let's go back to the basics of lagoon renewable energy as a function. So you have the ebb tides and the flood tides. Does the power generation happen in both directions?
Yes.
Are there any times of the day or of the year where you don't have power generation? So how baseload is it?
So it's not baseload because obviously the tide comes in and out twice a day. So we're generating on the ebb and the flood. If you think about it, as the tide comes in, so the water level on the outside of the lagoon will rise. We'll then let the water will then flow through the turbines, and then the water level inside of the lagoon will fill up. And then as the tide goes out, the water level on the outside drops, and then the water goes through the turbines and the water level inside drops. So the power profile is sort of sinusoidal because obviously the bigger the head, the more generation you're going to get. At low tide and high tide, obviously there isn't much head, so there's probably about 3 hours a day when we won't be generating. And again, we'll obviously generate more power in spring tides, which obviously have a higher range than in neap tides, which have a low range. However, what is certain is that you can predict exactly how much energy is going to be produced years in advance because the tides obviously are very well understood. So for National Grid, they will know exactly what power they're going to get from this scheme minute by minute, unlike wind and solar where if the clouds come out or the wind don't blow, then they ain't getting any power. So it's not base load, but it's
very predictable. And therefore it's a great business case for perhaps a battery energy storage system to be linked to the project either by you or by another investor that would see the opportunity opportunity to then convert it to baseload as well, I suppose.
No, absolutely. And we're obviously focusing on the generation at the moment. Clearly, there's opportunities for battery technology. We also have potentially quite near to us a site that could be suitable for pump storage as well, which there aren't very many in the UK, but there is one about 5 kilometres from the scheme. So there are options to provide storage solutions nearby.
And another thing that you have nearby is access to a pretty large grid infrastructure.
Well, precisely. So we're 12 kilometres from Shirton, which is the main grid connection for Hinkley Point, which obviously has been wired up to take a large quantity of baseload power. So our scheme includes the cost of the grid connection, unlike, for example, wind farms where the contract for difference price does not include the grid connection cost.
Okay, so one of the things I'm trying to picture is how this lagoon works and looks from the local community, what the impact would be on tourism and leisure activities. And is there a sort of a lobby which loves it and a lobby that hates it, that those that love it would say it's a beautiful place to create safe environment for wildlife and for swimming and leisure and boating activities? And is there another lobby group that says that it's a large blot on the landscape and it sort of spoils the general function of the tideway generally? How do you approach that, and what are you seeing as the sort of pros and cons in arguments?
So we're currently out to local consultation. We're most of the way through that now. Basically, from a visual profile perspective, you've got a large ring in the sea, which is obviously you'll see more of it at low tide than you will at high tide.
Would you see it from space?
It's not very wide, probably. I mean, it's as wide as the Great Wall of China, so I suspect yes is the answer to that. But it's not a big profile particularly. I mean, we've got Hinkley Point Sea up the estuary from us, which is a great big carbuncle, as the king would call it, sitting on the coast. So it's less invasive than that.
That's from a kind of a view and on the horizon side. But is there an argument that it has an impact on just leisure and tourism and boating and so on?
Yes, so one of the drawbacks of having a very large tidal range is that the North Somerset coast is not a great place for sailing, basically. However, the lagoon will provide a protected area, so we're planning to put a 400-berth marina at Minehead, which obviously will be great for tourism there, and we have various other attractions that we are thinking about.
And then some kind of a lock system or something to allow vessels in and out?
We'll have a lock system, yes, for both big and small vessels. So we think from a tourist perspective it should be positive for the area. Obviously it's providing jobs. Minehead and the north coast of Somerset is, like most coastal regions of the UK, highly deprived. There's not much going on for young people there.
And I suppose from a tourism point of view, kind of low waves means safe swimming.
Safe swimming, safe boating, safe water sports, etc.
And yet probably still a high wind area, isn't it? So it'd be popular for windsurfing, but the surfers will not like it.
Well, we don't really have surfers other than surfing the Severn Bore. Certainly not between Minehead and Watchet is not a recognised surfing area. So yes, so we think we've got some nice boosts.
It sounds like there's a lot of positives and not many negatives. What are the negatives that you're expecting to get through? I can imagine wildlife and conservation.
Well, we don't think there's many negatives there, but we've got to prove that, obviously, which is fine, and we'd expect to do that. Most of the consultation response that people are concerned about traffic, particularly some pinch points in Minehead itself.
Is that just in the construction phase?
In construction saves, and also if we've got generating more tourists coming. It's sort of one of those great things where people want the tourists for more business, but then worry about tourists on the roads for infrastructure. So,
because this, just on that, I mean, this could be a huge new tourist draw in terms of very safe swimming, boating, leisure activities, which is what? It's going to be a sort of 15-kilometre long sort of coastline that now suddenly has a protected, safe place to have your holidays and to do your leisure activities in a closed lagoon with beautiful wildlife that's going to be in a lagoon which can safely swim in and out, but ultimately may then stay in the lagoon more. You could imagine it could be a global draw for people just to go and have their holidays and to having a type of experience in a lagoon of this size that almost isn't available anywhere else in the world.
Well, that's what we would hope, obviously. I mean, for the locals at the moment, I mean, there's a couple of roads which already have quite tight pinch points on, which we are proposing to upgrade as part of the scheme. During the construction phase, there's not going to be that much traffic because most of the heavy equipment certainly will come in by sea. It's a bit difficult to shift a 70,000-tonne caisson by road, and similarly with the turbines. So we don't think there's going to be too much impact, but obviously there'll be construction workers who will need to come in and out. So we are proposing to upgrade the road network to enable enable that to happen. And then hopefully we do get more tourists and therefore more opportunities, particularly for young people in the local area who good jobs are desperately in short supply.
If you were doing this in Dubai, I mean, this could almost become a Palm-style project, which would have, houses and hotels along the wall as well. I guess the funding isn't available and the planning permission and permits would stop that anyway. But in another part of the world, it would probably be seen as potential to really focus on tourism and that element of wealth creation with the side benefit of a generation outcome as well, a power generation outcome as well.
Yes.
Although they have better weather.
Well, I was going to say, much as I love the southwest of England, it's not Dubai in terms of sunshine. But there's many other things that could happen. We're certainly open to talking to anybody who has any other ideas.
Do you have connections with the Emiratis?
Not yet, but I'm sure they'll be happy to put money up for this because, again, it's the sort of project that will generate good returns for them as well.
Something for you to think about, I think, which is expand the project beyond power generation to real estate opportunity as well. Who knows?
Who knows? But I think we'll start with step one, which is getting the project underway.
Okay, so it's a £10.5 billion project. Now, that's obviously based upon some kind of snapshot in time. Where are you in your expectation of when this project is built into a RAB model that actually is then open for organisations to formally apply to fund the project?
So I think we need, our basic first hurdle is to get government support from this. And when I say government support, obviously the RAB is an important piece of the jigsaw from DESNZ. Also, currently the policy framework for renewable power does not include tidal range. So EN1, which is the overarching national policy statement for energy, only mentions tidal range as being useful if it can be made cheaper. And EN3, the national policy statement for renewable energy infrastructure, which is the policy statement that ministers would use to decide on a development consent order, doesn't mention tidal range at all. It mentions tidal flow and various other...
Why is that?
I don't know. I think probably because of the Swansea Bay Lagoon issue, which, as I said, because it was a small lagoon, was very expensive, which is why the officials at the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero think it's non-viable. So we're coming with a different approach, and we've obviously been talking to them about how our approach delivers affordable energy as against other projects that have been considered in the past.
So where is the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero? So this is DESNZ, this is the British department, basically the energy department of the British government. Where are they in their assessment of this technology?
Well, they're currently looking at it, so they're not against it. They've basically challenged promoters such as ourselves to prove three things. One, that we can produce affordable energy versus other low carbon alternatives. Two, that we can do it produces benefits for the grid. And three, that it's environmentally sustainable. So I think we have on the first thing, on the affordability, we think that with our project we can generate power for under £100 a megawatt hour from the get-go, and that then drops over time because the nature of the RAB model is as you depreciate the RAB, the price falls.
How does that compare with other RAB models such as Sizewell C?
Sizewell C we think is about £125 a megawatt hour at the moment, depending on what the cost finally comes out at. And offshore wind, we think by the time you've taken into account the connection to the shore and charges for intermittency is probably about £140 a megawatt hour. So it's definitely competitive against those. The National Energy Systems Operator produced a report just before Christmas or in October looking at the potential system benefits of tidal energy, and they concluded that it would be beneficial. Obviously, reliability is a big thing, but then also in terms of providing other system benefits as well. And as we've already discussed, we think the environmental case is manageable. So we think we've got answers for all of those. We've put that to ministers. They are now thinking about it, and hopefully sometime this year we will have a positive response. Once we've got a positive response, then that's when I'll get into fundraising mode. So we've got timing that we probably think it'll take 4 to 5 years to get the development consent order, given all the environmental studies we'll have to do, etc. Once we've got that, then the construction phase is probably another 5 years, given the scale of the project. So it's basically 10 years from when DESNZ hopefully lays the golden egg to us actually generating power.
That seems like a long time.
Are you an energy business looking to revisit your strategy? Did you know EIC's Consult team helped 50 businesses last year? How? We helped them with their strategic investment decisions using EIC's award-winning market intelligence and data to provide them with tailored, pragmatic BD strategies, presentations and reports. It works. Our data and insights have helped customers to confirm their decisions to export, diversify, and grow. Contact us now to learn more about EIC Consult and begin your own journey to smarter decisions. Details in the description below.
Is there any reason why it's going to take so long? Could it not be accelerated? Because it feels like this could be one of the major projects that gets us to our UK 2050 net zero obligations. And I suppose if it's 10 years, that would still be within that scope. But is there any way that that could be accelerated to 10 years?
Well, I mean, we could accelerate the construction phase. We've said 5 years because we're being quite conservative, because in terms of landing the caissons on the seabed, you need to do that on neap tides in the right weather window, which means you can't do it in winter because obviously the sea's too rough at that time of year. So we've gone with a fairly conservative construction process. So, if the weather's better, we could potentially do it faster, but we're very keen at this stage to make sure that our plans are totally credible. And
so you want to be seen as authentic and credible and professional and not just overselling and under-delivering.
Exactly. So we have David Coase, who's another board member who was the chief engineer for Alfred McAlpine for many years, has done all the design. Like all good engineers, he's very conservative, and that's how we like it.
So what's next for you? Is it basically promotion and raising awareness, or is it now kind of just the sort of the corridors of power just need to get their head around the idea and move from it's not on our formal plans to it is?
That's exactly right. It's really, we need the government to get on side. Coming back to your earlier question about what's investable, things that aren't investable are things that don't have. Your first due diligence question in looking at this scheme is going to be, is the government supportive? And the answer at the moment to that question is no. So we need the answer to that to be yes. And then the next question begins, well, let's have a look at the returns and the risk in construction, etc.
I can imagine one of the challenges you face, because for a lot of new technologies, let's call it new, so in the energy mix in the UK, this would be a new technology. The way most sort of technology readiness level processes work is you start small and you accept that it's expensive, and then you prove the technology, and then you start scaling up. And that's where the cost benefits come. In this case, you're starting huge and you're needing everybody to accept that it will deliver straight away. And it makes sense because, as you say, the Swansea Bay initiative didn't work because it was too small and didn't have the economics. But it also didn't get the support to prove it.
Yeah.
So it's chicken or egg, is it, for you, in terms of, well, we need someone to have the faith that this technology works. They can go to Brittany and elsewhere to see that it works. But now they also need to believe that it's low enough cost and low enough wildlife risk to prove its case. How do you get someone that's used to having this, we trial it first mentality, and we do it in a small, financially, controllable way to assess it. And then we say, okay, we all agree, we like it. Okay, now we open it up for scale. This is straight to scale straight away. Is that your number one challenge here, is that you're asking people to skip past that normal first phase?
Yes, I think that is right. I mean, the issue, as I explained at the beginning, is that if you build a small scheme, it's not economic. And the problem is a small scheme will still cost £3 or £4 billion. So it's not really small. And the second thing is that if you build a small lagoon for £3 or £4 billion, you're not generating that much electricity. It doesn't really make much difference. And for DESNZ to put a RAB in place, they will need to pass primary legislation. So I think our argument to ministers is if you're going to do primary legislation, then you may as well start with a big scheme. The other advantage of a big scheme is obviously then you're amortising the cost of building the infrastructure over a much larger number of units, which means that once we've finished, we will have built, hopefully, a turbine factory. We will have had the docks for caisson construction, which then means other schemes, which are smaller, can be built much more economically, and all the lessons will have been learned over a large scheme.
And those large ports and docks can be used for floating offshore wind infrastructure build out as well, I assume.
Or continue for making caissons for other projects, because there's another project. There's a project in South Wales. There's a project in Liverpool City Council are trying to promote one in the Mersey. There's another project in North Wales. There's another project in Morecambe. All of these could follow on, but you need to do the first one.
All right, so there's a lot of investor interest and a lot of local, regional interest in using the natural resources to provide this kind of renewable power. The economics are working. If you like, most of the stakeholders are lining up to this is a new way of thinking about providing relatively base load, in fact more affordable than large-scale nuclear, and if you combine everything, offshore wind, renewable technology solutions. So it sounds obvious.
It does, indeed, but it's still a lot of money and it's a big civil project.
Yeah, but so is offshore wind, and so is nuclear.
It's very true. But the main thing is it hasn't been done before at this scale.
That's what I mean. You're asking people to go big straight away because that's the only way the economics are going to work.
Well, and the only way to make a meaningful difference to our net zero, because the other point about starting with a small project, each project is going to take at least 5 to 7 years to construct. So if you start with a small project, then you see whether that works. We're not going to be starting on a bigger project like ours for probably another 10 years, in which case you're moving very, very close to 2050 to getting it done. So
okay, so there are other elements to the, if you like, the value add from a project like this, with jobs creation in terms of the tourism that's created, benefits to the local economy. How are you building that case to persuade the decision makers that this isn't just a clean growth solution and an affordable one at that, but also it builds so much, local and national energy security benefit, and as well as jobs and wealth benefits?
Well, we've had a certain amount of work done on that. We think that the gross value added from this project will exceed, in terms of jobs created and so on, will exceed the cost of the project by year one of the project. So after that, it's all free.
So I said again, the GVA, so the return on investment is less than a year.
We will have generated more gross value added for the economy than the cost of the scheme by the time we're operating.
Wow, there aren't many projects that can say that.
Well, indeed.
So this is then not a DESNZ decision. That's a tourism decision, and it's a Treasury decision.
Exactly. Well, I think the Treasury will always have impact into whether to grant the regulatory asset-based treatment. So this is obviously something that's quite persuasive for them as well. But we think there will be about 8,000 jobs created for the construction phase. And obviously that's not all going to be in Minehead and Watchet, because the case on construction and the turbine construction will be off-site, probably mostly in South Wales and Bristol. And then we've probably got up to sort of 400 jobs created locally, of which we will probably have about 100 for maintenance of the scheme itself, and then probably another 200 or 300 from additional tourist revenue, which for a relatively small town like Minehead and Watchet is quite a big uplift.
It's been fascinating, Aidan, to talk to you about this. So if we look to the future as we wrap up here, what do you hope will happen in the rest of 2026?
Well, I'm hoping that we can get the government to change EN1 and EN3, and I know they're working on what the right funding model should be for big projects like this, so hopefully that is concluded with a positive statement that RAB is acceptable, and therefore I can go out and start raising the £50 million that we need to get a development consent order and start the work, because the sooner we start, the sooner we'll finish.
Yes, and looking at your career history that we went through, there's no doubt you'll be able to raise the funds with the experience you have. So it's a critical point you're at, and hopefully you'll get there as soon as possible. From an EIC point of view, I just think this is a brilliant project, and we're very interested in this idea of energy security morphing into what we call energy sovereignty, where having homegrown and home-generated energy is more important than having resilient energy where it's a combination of domestic and international supplies, whether it's interconnectors or whether it's imports of LNG and so on. And this is a great solution to that. And particularly if we can get the technology manufactured and developed in the UK, even better. So this has great potential. It uniquely so has that potential.
Well, it does. I mean, at the end of the day, the tide is 100% British. It's also very difficult to sabotage a very large dam in the Bristol Channel.
But also base load, also predictable tide, also fits into storage solutions that provides true base load. So actually would also be a great base for things like data centre build out. And right now the UK has not found itself to be that popular with data centre builders who are choosing places like Ireland instead. But this kind of power solution would suddenly, I think, meet the needs of data centre installers who are looking for predictable, reliable 5 nines power supply, and this would provide it in combination with energy storage. So I think this is a critical project, very exciting project. Thank you so much for sharing the details today. Best of luck as you go through your process of getting support from government. And perhaps let's do another one of these, maybe in a year's time when that's happening and you're on the funding round.
Hopefully so. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Aidan. All the best. And looking forward to perhaps doing this next one in Somerset.
Lovely. Look forward to it.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye.
Well, that's our show for today. A huge shout out to Samara, Lucas and Joao and the rest of our incredible team behind the scenes. This show truly wouldn't happen without them. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean the world if you'd hit that follow button. Give a 5-star rating or leave a review. It's the best way to help us keep doing what we love. And as a thank you, I'll leave you with my favourite 5-word joke. Love wind power. Big fan.